Hello, this is Todd Luck, and this is a review of Pellucidar Across Savage Seas, #2 by American Mythology. This is the second in a 4-issue miniseries that's part of the Edgar Rice Burroughs universe. And Edgar Rice Burroughs is, of course, the creator of Tarzan and John Carter of Mars, and American Mythology puts out comic books of some of his lesser known properties like Pellucidar at the Earth's Core. And first of all, thank you guys very much for the well wishes last week. I am healing very well, and I was able to go out and get this thing at the comic shop. So let's take a look at the cover. So this is another unusual cover for this series. And, you know, on paper I would say, no, don't do that. I mean, I can't see the main character's face. Why would you do that? But I gotta say, when I see this cover, it 100% works. I mean, it's just the way it's rendered just works so well. I mean, just the kinetic energy and how everybody is drawn. I mean, there's just something really, really cool about the way she draws this Sagoth, which is, you know, this ape man, you know, who lives at the Earth's core. I mean, there's just such a beautiful kinetic energy to it. And I want to know about this guy. I want to know about this ape man who's like jumping on top of this giant crab monster, you know. And Gretchen, you know, she's in her action pose, but very well dressed. I mean, this is the best dressed adventurer I have ever seen. I want to know like how she's gonna look this good and face off against crab monsters. It really just sucks you in and makes you want to see the interior. And of course, this is actually drawn by the interior artist, so it's just a great preview of the quality that you're going to get inside. And this is art by Mariana Puglia. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. She also did the Moon Maid, The Three Keys by American Mythology, another Edgar Rice Burroughs comic, which I highly, highly recommend. I just love the storytelling here, the way the characters are rendered. She does great facial expressions, great kinetic action. I mean, just look at just the flow, you know, of this action. You know, you never seen a Sagoth move like that, right? I mean, it's just great. And, you know, and even once we get past the action, you know, just the scenes where the characters are talking, you know, their faces, you know, are so expressive, but so are their body postures, right? So is their body language. I mean, you know, and you know, you gotta love a Sagoth with a gut. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I just love the rendering of everything. It's just a beautiful looking comic book. It's also beautifully covered. It just looks colored, covered as well, but beautifully colored comic, and I just love it to death. And so this second issue picks up where the first issue left off. The first issue, it really felt like the opening of a Burroughs novel. They get on an airship and they sail to the Earth's core, and there's a lot of talking, a lot of getting to know the characters and the situation that they're in. And then, of course, something goes terribly wrong, and Gretchen von Harben, our hero here, with the most epic curls in comics, has to get out of that airship and parachutes down to an island below where she's stranded. And of course, she finds herself in this issue in a hostile environment, of course, but with an unlikely ally in the form of this Sagoth. And that's kind of interesting because Sagoth are usually the servants of the Mahar, who are the villains at the Earth's core. And so it's very cool to see, you know, kind of a different take on a Sagoth here. And so it's not all slam bang action. Things will calm down a little bit, but then she's going to meet the things that live on the island. And it's a very interesting new culture that we see, new characters, new creatures that she's going to be involved with. And she's going to get in a whole different type of trouble, one that's going to require her to think her way out and try to kind of negotiate the situation. And there's a lot of funny moments in there. And it really does feel like peak Burroughs. It really does feel very familiar to situations Burroughs would put his characters in while at the same time feeling very fresh. And one interesting twist on this story is that Gretchen von Harben is actually the mother of a new character that's in the novels and in the comics named Victory Harben. And this is the story of how she meets Victory's dad, and they're not necessarily on the same page when they meet. They're not necessarily meeting on the best terms. And let's just say there's some good scenes there that I really enjoyed. And so Victory Harben is in a miniseries called Beyond the Furthest Star, Warriors of Xandar. And it's really interesting. It wasn't written intentionally like this, but they are both in very similar situations, both her mother in the past and Victory Harben, because Victory is stranded on this planet that she's never been to named Xandar, right? And Gretchen is stranded on an island, which is a very similar situation. You know, they're both discovering, you know, the creatures and characters that live on this island and, you know, the kind of society that they're, you know, getting sucked up into, you know, and trying to survive. And it's just, it's a really interesting back and forth between these two miniseries. If you want to get them both, you certainly don't have to, but I just really enjoyed the kind of parallels between these two books. You know, Burroughs, you know, was a very formulaic writer. He would repeat a lot of his tropes in his books, but that's because they work. And, you know, there's really something about the American mythology books that just really get Burroughs and really know how to use those tropes and use them in new and different ways to create new stories that perfectly feel like what Burroughs would have written if he was still around. You know, if he was still around, obviously Burroughs, you know, would have, you know, been writing stories like this with, you know, women in more traditional action roles, right? You know, he would have been dealing with, you know, characters who were minorities and putting them in more prominent roles. So it's just really cool to see stuff like this, you know, to carry on Burroughs' legacy. And, you know, right now, you know, for my money, these comics are what's keeping Burroughs' legacy alive in comics. And just as a fun side note, if you're interested in Gretchen von Harben, she is a character who originally appeared in the book Tarzan and the Tarzan Twins with Jabberjaw the Golden Lion. I think that's the entire title of it. But it's the second Tarzan Twins story that Burroughs wrote. And so both of them were actually collected in this gold key issue of Tarzan. This is Tarzan 196, and I believe this would probably be Gretchen von Harben's first comic book appearance. And so here is young Gretchen von Harben as a child in all her 1970s comic book glory. So the story of the book that she appears in is that the Beastmen of Opar kidnap her when she gets lost in the jungle. And these are renegade beastmen of Opar. And so they're looking to make her their new law, their new high priestess of the sun god. And they try to force her to like make human sacrifices and stuff. And of course the Tarzan twins come along and save her. This is a adaptation of both Tarzan twin books in one comic book. So it is a bit abridged. And there's also a modern comic adaptation of the Tarzan twins in the comic strips that you can subscribe to on EdgarRiceBurroughs.com. There's a Tarzan twins strip that adapts both of the books, and this is Gretchen von Harben in her modern day comic book glory. And this is a much more thorough adaptation of the Tarzan twin books. But curiously enough, there are scenes that didn't make it into the comic strip that are in this shorter adaptation and vice versa. So I actually recommend getting both adaptations if you're interested in, you know, getting comic adaptations of the Tarzan twins. And so enough history. What I recommend on the current series with Gretchen von Harben is absolutely go get it. The American mythology comics based on the Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff are some of the best stuff you're going to get. They have really, the series that are going on right now just have some really excellent artists and art teams and just excellent writing. And that's why I am sad to throw in a bit of news that Mike Wolfer, who has been writing this line, is unfortunately going to be leaving American Mythology. However, he is going to be working for Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, so he will still be working on Burroughs stuff. He did a Facebook Live last night, and I'm going to do a separate video because he dropped a bit of news, and so I'm just going to do a separate video about the stuff he talked about and, you know, what he said about, you know, what's left of his stuff that will be published and some stuff that is coming from Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. So look for that video, and I've got more reviews coming and more videos coming. So like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, see ya.